If you've flown the DJI Neo 2 for any meaningful amount of time, you already understand why people like it. Like, it's light, it's fun, it's easy to fly, and it punches above its weight in a lot of ways. For many people, it's one of those drones that doesn't just look good on paper, but actually feels good to use. And yet, almost every conversation around the Neo 2 eventually hits the same wall. Battery life. DJI advertises up to 18 minutes of flight time. In the real world, that number rarely shows up. Most owners report something closer to 10 or 11 minutes, maybe 12 if conditions are ideal. And while that might sound acceptable on paper, it changes the entire experience in practice. You're constantly checking the battery level, you're cutting shots short, you're landing just as things start getting interesting. For a drone that encourages exploration and relaxed flying, that limitation is hard to ignore. I've seen one comment repeated more times than I can count. If this thing could just fly for 16 or 17 minutes, it would be a beast. That single sentence explains why this battery matters, because the difference between 11 minutes and 17 minutes isn't incremental. It's transformational. It changes how often you land, how you plan flights, and whether the Neo 2 feels like a fun toy or a genuinely usable small drone. So when a higher capacity battery for the Neo 2 started appearing online, it immediately caught attention, not because of flashy marketing or bold promises, but because it directly addressed the Neo 2's biggest weakness. A 3,300 milliamp hour battery, nearly double the capacity of the stock one, is not a small upgrade on a drone this size. Before going any further, it's important to be clear about one thing. This video is not sponsored. I have no affiliation with the seller, and later on I'll mention that I'm dropping the battery link in the description purely for reference, not promotion. Now let's talk about the battery itself, because on paper it raises just as many questions as it answers. This is marketed as an OEM Neo 2 battery that's been modified with a larger internal cell. It's available through third-party marketplaces. It costs noticeably more than the standard battery, and it takes time to arrive. This isn't an impulse buy. It's something you consider only if battery life is genuinely holding you back from enjoying the drone. Not the first and most obvious concern is weight. The Neo 2 works as well as it does partly because it's extremely light. Adding capacity almost always means adding mass, and on a drone this small, even modest weight increases matter. Extra weight can affect efficiency, wind handling, and overall responsiveness. So the real question isn't just whether the drone stays in the air longer, it's whether it still feels like the Neo 2 people enjoy flying. Compatibility is the next concern. Modified or third-party batteries can sometimes cause issues, firmware warnings, charging inconsistencies, inaccurate battery readings, or unexpected behavior. If the drone doesn't fully accept the battery as legitimate, the upgrade quickly becomes more trouble than it's worth. Charging behavior matters as well. Twice, a higher capacity battery takes longer to charge, and it places more demand on chargers and power delivery. If charging becomes unreliable or inconvenient, that extra flight time can lose some of its appeal very quickly. So at this point, we have a battery that promises to fix the Neo 2's biggest complaint, but also introduces new variables: more weight, higher cost, longer wait time. The question that actually matters isn't whether this battery exists, it's whether the trade-offs make sense in real-world flying. Now, this is where a lot of people immediately push back, and honestly, their arguments are not wrong. One of the most common responses is, why would I spend that much on one battery when I can buy 2 stock batteries for the same price? And on the surface, that sounds like a no-brainer. 2 batteries means more total flight time, more redundancy, and less risk if one fails. Another argument I see a lot is, why do you even need that much flight time on a drone like the Neo 2? If you want longer endurance, better stability, and fewer compromises, why not just step up to something like a mini-series drone instead? Both of those points are completely valid, depending on how you fly. If your goal is maximum minutes per dollar, stock batteries win. If you're happy landing often, swapping batteries, and keeping flights short and conservative, this upgrade makes very little sense. And if what you really want is a different class of drone with longer endurance built in from the start, then yes, a larger drone might be the better tool. But here's the part that often gets overlooked. Like, a lot of people don't want a different drone. They want the same Neo 2, just without the constant pressure of the battery timer. The appeal here isn't about chasing bigger numbers or turning the Neo 2 into something it isn't. It's about preserving what people already like about it: the size, the simplicity, the relaxed flying style, while removing the one limitation that keeps interrupting the experience. Buying 2 stock batteries gives you more total flight time. A higher capacity battery gives you more continuous flight time, and those are not the same thing. For some pilots, landing every 10 minutes is perfectly fine. For others, that break completely kills flow, especially for smooth motion, exploration, or FPV style flying, where continuity matters more than total air time. But that's why solving the battery issue on the Neo 2 actually solves more than just endurance. It reduces rushed flying, it reduces constant land and swap cycles, and it allows the drone to be used the way many people already want to use it. That doesn't make this upgrade necessary, it makes it specific. And that distinction is important. That's where testing becomes important. To understand whether this battery really delivers, 2 types of flights were used to paint a clear picture. The first was a controlled indoor hover test. The second was a more realistic outdoor flight that reflects how people actually use the Neo 2. The indoor hover test is simple but revealing. With the stock Neo 2 battery installed, the drone was allowed to hover indoors without any stick input until it forced a landing at around 10% battery. Now, this removes wind, speed changes, and pilot input from the equation. The result was right around 12 minutes of hover time, exactly what most Neo 2 owners experience day to day. With the higher capacity battery installed, the same test was repeated under the same conditions. This time, the Neo 2 stayed in the air for just over 18 minutes. That's more than 6 additional minutes in the most controlled scenario possible. At that point, it's clear the increased capacity is doing real work and not simply being canceled out by the added weight. But hovering indoors isn't how people fly, so the outdoor test is the one that really matters. For the outdoor flight, the Neo 2 was flown at consistent speeds across varying altitudes all the way up to its maximum height, and allowed to fly until it forced a landing at around 10% battery. With the stock battery, the drone landed after just under 11 minutes. Alright, wind likely played a role, but again, this result is very familiar to most Neo 2 owners, with the higher capacity battery, outdoor flight time stretched to just under 18 minutes. That's nearly 7 extra minutes of real-world flying, not hovering, not ideal conditions, but actual movement, altitude changes, and wind, and that number matters because it lands exactly in the range people have been asking for since the Neo 2 launched. 16 to 17 minutes of real flight time changes how the Neo 2 feels. You're no longer rushing. You're not constantly planning landings. You're not watching the battery meter every 30 seconds. The drone finally feels like it has breathing room. So what about the downsides? Yes, the battery is heavier. That weight exists, and on a drone this small, it's not insignificant, but based on these results, the efficiency gained from the larger capacity outweighs the performance penalty. The motors are working harder, but they're being supplied for longer. In practice, the trade-off favors flight time without making the drone feel compromised. That doesn't mean this battery is for everyone. It costs more than the standard battery it takes time to arrive. And while it behaves like an OEM battery in use, it's still not something DJI officially sells through its normal retail channels. Those are real considerations, and they matter depending on how you use the Neo 2. But if battery life is the one thing stopping you from fully enjoying this drone, this upgrade genuinely changes the equation. It doesn't turn the Neo 2 into a different drone. It turns it into the version many people expected from the beginning. Once again, this video is not sponsored, and I'll be dropping the battery link in the description for anyone who wants to look into it themselves. If you're flying the Neo 2, I'd love to know what kind of flight times you're actually seeing and whether an extra 6 or 7 minutes would change how you use it. Let me know in the comments, and if you appreciate calm, real-world breakdowns instead of hype, consider subscribing.